Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Right Off Track. I'm your host, Anya Smith, and today we're diving headfirst into the realm of innovation, gamification, and a life well played. Join us as we shine a spotlight on a wonderful individual who is weaving together technology and gamified learning to create something truly meaningful. Our guest today is Sam Sokol, an innovator whose path has taken him from technology consulting to the heart of in-person gamified learning experiences. Picture a world where technology dances hand in hand with play, illuminating pathways of growth and connection. Sam is our guide through this fascinating landscape where he seamlessly navigates to the realm of Web3, e-commerce, and learning management systems. Together with his dedicated team, Sam's crafted experiences that spark positive change and leave a lasting impact. They have also collaborated with businesses, organizations, and community groups and influential figures like United Nations and Dr. Deepak Chopra. And this energy has paved this way for the advancement of Sam's recent innovative game, Graticube. I'm going to show that right over here. A true testament to the potential of shared vision. Graticube is not merely a tabletop game, it's a vessel of curiosity and gratitude, meticulously designed to unite perfect strangers, best friends, family members, and coworkers in an enchanting atmosphere of camaraderie. Gratitude serves as a bridge, seamlessly bridging people together, nurturing connections, and crafting memories that transcend the ordinary. So, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to the kind innovator himself, the driving force behind Graticube, the advocate of life well played, Sam Sokol. Welcome to Right Off Track, Sam.
Wow. Okay. I think I'm just going to take you with me wherever I go for that intro. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. This is so fun. This is the first time we're talking about a game. Like, to me, as somebody who has like little children and really enjoys like those rich experiences, like games are always a fun way to do that. And you're taking that to the next level. So when you told me like what you're doing, I was like, I'm not sure. Like, how is that even possible? Like, how do we build a connection like through a game between different strangers? So I'm fascinated and excited to share your story and like the meaningful work you're doing with this.
Well, thank you very much. It's a curious question, right? I mean, games, when we were looking around at sort of the history of games, they go back to the beginning, the very beginning. It was probably somebody was walking along, they kicked a rock and they said, "Oh, we could turn that into a game."
Yeah.
So it's time immemorial, 5,000 years old, at least. We go back and look at these games. And I
Yeah.
think those games can be uniting. You
Yeah.
can remember the time around the dinner table you played, maybe the first time you played checkers, and the
Yeah.
nervousness, like, oh, I'm going to win. How am I going to do this? Can I beat the other
Yeah.
person? Or maybe you got beaten badly at Monopoly and you're like, I'm never doing that again. So it really brings out a lot about who we are, how we interact, and who the people are around us.
Absolutely. What's funny about that is like my husband apparently won the Monopoly championship in fifth grade. He's very proud of. But also, Monopoly cannot be played with his family because they're from the East Coast, and it becomes a very competitive atmosphere. So it's funny the experiences that games bring into our kind of environment, things that we choose to do and not to do, and yeah, great habits
Well,
there.
it's curious to think what makes a game too, because in some ways, it's funny you mentioned the East Coast, because when we introduced this game called Graticube to people, they say, "Oh, cool. How do I win?"
I have the
And
most
then
amount of gratitude. I have the most amount of gratitude.
exactly, like, I'm gonna get all the cards, all the Gratitude cards. So do I get all those and I win? And it's a very intense energy, and yet there's something beautiful about having the mind active and looking for those
Yeah.
ways to win. And yet, win lose sucks when you lose. And
Yeah.
so, what is it like when it feels good to everyone? What does that winners all feel like? And so, some people say, "Oh, that's not a game."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a game because it seems like everyone wins. I'm like, well, we have this card in the game called No Rules. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
KNOW rules. And it's a way to let people go with a strong structure if they want around the rules, or a lighter structure, or play the way they want, make it personal. And I think that's really important with
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, is like you make it yours. However it is, it should be yours. And this is a versatile game that can be played however people choose.
Yeah, and just to give our listeners a little bit of a kind of context of what we anticipate, we're gonna do a little demo. Like we each picked a card that we don't know from this game, and I'll describe it in a moment, and we'll look at it. But before we talk about like one thing I also think is interesting about games, like sometimes like again we don't want to have that loser experience. I have a wonderful 10-year-old, my son, and like the moment he loses interest in the game, right? Like that's one downside of a game. The other part is sometimes like you don't even want to engage in games because like, you've done them and it's so repetitive. Like you know, like the experience you're gonna encounter. So like you take the card, you play the game once, and you're like, well, I'm not gonna play it again. What I love about this is that every time the experience is gonna be unique, and it's going to go beyond just like a fun kind of like, oh, let's just do something we have to think about. It's really that meaningful opportunity, which is exciting to me. Like I don't think we'll talk about that more, but like prefacing like that, this game is so powerful because of its unique element where every time the experience is going to be different, and to your point, there's no losers. So like you don't have to like feel like something negative could potentially even come out of it.
It's such a good point. I mean, just the choice to play is an option to grow. And there's this old quote. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but they say the river is never the same river twice. So if you cross a river,
Yeah.
both the river is changing and you're changing. If you come back a year later, maybe the river's still there. You walk through it, but you're not the same. And so this sense of people have described, and I didn't know at the time, but described the game as a liminal space. And I had heard of subliminal, but I didn't know what liminal was until I looked it up. And liminal is basically like a doorway. If you look at architecture, it's the thing between things that allows you to go from one room to another, from the outside to the inside. And so in the sense that we're always changing, this is a space to explore that expansion. And where in some games you sort of know the moves, you know what you're going to do. In life, it's similar. Where you're from, what do you do? And that's kind of the common set of questions. It's the default. And in this game, you're given an opportunity and an invitation to explore something deeper inside yourself. So yes, it's about connecting with others, but it's also about that ever-changing relationship with self.
Absolutely. And to take it back a little bit, like unpeel the onion. We're not going to cry. We're just going to unpeel it delicately. Before we dive into like how you founded Graticube, because it has an amazing, fun story. Like, I want to know, like, behind the layer of Sam. Like, you are such an innovator. If anybody looks at your background, you're constantly like founding something, co-founding something, being in that space. Like, how did you even get to a mindset where like this is what I want to do? Like, how did you get that confidence to say, like, I'm just going to try and build stuff from the ground up? And thirdly, how did you get to a place like where I'm going to do something, all of that, and it's going to matter and help people?
Oh, great questions. Thank you for that. Those are great questions. I think in some ways, and I don't know this to be absolutely true, but sometimes I feel like you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. And I can't say that's always true. I think people can convert and find the entrepreneurial spirit inside them and nurture that. I felt like I had that when I was born. And when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, right? Our family didn't have a lot of money. And so for me, it was like, okay, how do I get this thing called money? It's going to allow me to do the things I want to do. And so I can go, oh, I can push that lawnmower with it. Oh, nope, you're not old enough. You can't push that yet. You're too young. Okay, well, how about a snow shovel? Oh, a snow shovel. Okay. So I found whatever the basic thing was that I could do at the youngest age and just started figuring it out. In school, I was like, I can sell candy to my friends. I get the better deal with this. So it was always sort of like, how can I make that happen? And I did along the way. So that was sort of the initial thing, was like, wow, this is possible. You can form a path for yourself and go do it. And that really appealed to me because I wanted the freedom. I wanted to be able to enjoy the freedom and have money and do the thing. So if it was school, they said, well, hey, you can sell these pies. And they were like dessert pies, right? That you could sell to your family. I'm like, well, I don't have a huge family, but there's a neighborhood. So I went door to door and no one said you couldn't, right? So it was
Adorable.
like that
So
thinking
adorable.
outside the box. Yeah, so there I am, this little kid knocking on the door. Will you buy a pie? And most people said yes. It was. I mean, you also get rejection, right? Wait
Pie
a minute.
rejection.
Yeah, pie rejection. No pies in the face, but pie rejection. Well, it'd be good a pie in the face because then you go, well, now you need a new pie, right?
Yeah. I'm going to charge you for that one.
Yeah, that's one we'll charge you for. So anyway, it was just a path of entrepreneurship that kind of grew as time went on. And I think as an entrepreneur and as a human, you ask, well, okay, to kind of your next question, how do you build something? How do you do that with greater leverage, right? So that was missing for me. And I had a friend, she said, well, there's this guy, he teaches these classes, seminars, workshops, go check it out. And I've got a ticket for you. It's normally $1,500, but you're in. And so that appealed to me because she liked this person. It was a transfer of trust, which is important. And I went to this 3-day workshop called Success Secrets for the 21st Century, which sounds pretty hokey, but I showed up and was blown away. I was blown away. And it was like pushing, all the brain was pushing on the skull. Like it was literally mind expanding. That's literally how it felt for 3 days, just going, wow, this is amazing. and then invited other people back. And it was teaching these principles about leverage, right? It's cool to have a business, great. But now what? How do you go from you've got a great burger to now your burger's made in every city in the country, right? Every major city. And so
Yeah.
I didn't have that. It was something I was very hungry for, the burger and the opportunity.
Are you a foodie? Because I feel like all of your successes are.
I love food. I eat breakfast thinking about lunch. Yes.
I can tell that in your entrepreneurial journey is the theme.
Yes, definitely. Hunger. There's a hunger for life and a hunger for food. They go together.
Didn't mean to interrupt your story. Please keep going.
Not at all. Not at all. So I think it's just you look at these ways to build, and you also say, well, I need a team. I want to work with great people. And so being at that workshop was mind expanding for the content, but also amazing for the networking opportunity. And in one way, I had this quote unquote normal life, normal friends, whatever. And then I would go to these ascended experiences and feel like, wow, these people are amazing, and they're traveling the world and they have these businesses and they have these great ideas. And it was just opening and opening and opening my perspective of what was possible. So that was a big piece to my journey, was then following this like personal development, self-growth. And I had done school and I got my MBA, and I still felt like there was a lot more that I didn't have. Even with that education, a good education, I didn't feel like I had what I needed. So that was the second piece. And the third was baked into the second piece, which is, I think when you're looking for relationships, the number one thing that matters is values, right? People will say, well, I can go make money at this. We can make money at a lot of things, right? Bernie Madoff figured out how to make money, and he made a lot of it, and he went to jail, right? He was caught. And there are a lot of people out there that will make a lot of money, but not be delivering in a way that adds the value that I wanted. So integrity is a question for each of us. We answer that for ourselves. And that was one that I was hoping to answer. Like, what does it mean to have integrity? And my conception of that is that I have a sense that we're all here to do something, right? I'm a certain kind of animal. I'm a hungry animal, a foodie, hungry animal that likes entrepreneurship naturally. And so how can I follow those natural tendencies and really honor that kind of inner drive, whatever it is that wants to be expressed through me? And I think that's the essence of the third question, which is, what are you building towards? What does it mean to do something that has purpose or ultimately has value?
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that so thoughtfully. And if you mind me asking, like, I'm just fascinated on the subject. Like, what is your personal attitude towards failure? Because I find that like that relationship, let's say, is very indicative of what people do in life and their entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there's a big difference between making a mistake and a failure. To me, the mistakes are necessary. It's like course corrections. If you think about something simple as like walking, right? So we say that the fastest between A and B is a straight line, right? You got to walk that straight line. Yet nobody walks in a straight line unless you're on a tightrope. And that's kind of awkward. You see these people walking in a tightrope. So there's really no such thing as A to B being the fastest with a direct line. First, you make a mistake with your left foot because you're off target. You're headed left. And then you make a mistake with your right foot, and you're off target to right, left, right, and you're just making course corrections towards something. And even then, A to B, you've decided B is the place to be, or maybe someone told you got to go from A to B, and maybe it's not. Maybe you get halfway there and you go, oh, but look at this thing off to the side that I just noticed in the process. That wasn't my original idea, but I'm going to choose to learn. So I think the process of making mistakes is inherent in what we do. We should celebrate it. And if we choose not to learn from those mistakes, then there's that possibility for failure. And another piece about failure that's really important, I think people have embraced making mistakes, which is good. But I think there's also the space of not giving up. In other words, if you make a promise to do something, fulfill that promise. If your A to B is like, I promise I'm going to do this. And if you can't, then communicate that right away. Okay, look, I broke my leg. I can't make it from A to B the same way. I'm going to get some crutches or a wheelchair. It's going to take a minute. But I think failure is choosing not to learn from the mistakes. And failure, yes, they say failure is not an option. Failure is an option. And I think we should say that, you choose that. If you choose it, you choose failure. Let's choose something bigger. Let's choose commitment. I think it's important to be committed and accomplish what you say you're going to do.
Love that. Thank you. Just side conversation, side topic, but I love that. I find it so interesting, like how people approach that and how it shapes them. So let's get back to Graticube, and there's an amazing story behind that. So I would love to hear, like, you told me about this, like how this came about, but I'd love to hear like your story on how you even came up with the idea, why it mattered to you, and like where you drew inspiration.
Thank you. So the inspiration in part came from the personal development, self-growth, gamified learning, because all of that was gamified. And I didn't mention that before, but essentially you'd be given instructions about playing a game with other people in the room. I have 30 people in a room, and you take on a task. And one of them, they call it the XY game, right? So you and your partner, there's 8 total people, you get 4 groups of 2, and you go, okay, round 1, let's look at what we get if we throw an X or if we throw a Y. And then you participate in that way. And then when you're all done, you get scored in some way. They say you did this or you didn't do this or whatever, and there's a debrief. That tells you something about how you show up, not just for the game, but how you show up in life. Okay. So that was fascinating to me. Not this rote memorization, someone blabbing at the board and you're, sleeping because it's boring, but that you get to play and you'll never forget that because it's personal. So that was part of the background for me. The context was, okay, this has got to be fun. It's got to be colorful to do it. The next part was I had gone to Burning Man, and it was my 3rd time at Burning Man. I've been 4 times. It was my 3rd time at Burning Man. And I was driving home at the end feeling like I didn't connect like I wanted to with people. Like I didn't quite show up, and I kept wondering, what was it? What happened? Why didn't I connect with them? And a lot of things about Burning Man are radical, right? Radical inclusion, radical self-reliance, all these kinds of things. And so I wanted to say, all right, how can I embrace radical connection? What would that look like? Could I be a better listener? So as I thought about that, I realized, yeah, I could probably be a way better listener. So let me be silent for a day at Burning Man. And then as I thought about it some more, I thought, well, that's not really radical. That's kind of, just dipping your toe in the water, Sam. How about the whole week? What would it be? Radical silence, practice that for a whole week. And so I had the idea that the next year, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go back. I'll be silent for a week. And I had this little card in my pocket for people if they noticed that I was silent. So not like a sign around my neck to say, hey, I'm the silent guy, come talk to me, but really just a pocket with a card in it. And it said, since I learned to speak, I haven't stopped. So I'm choosing this week at Burning Man to be silent. And if you have a story you might like to share, I promise I won't interrupt. And that was extraordinary. People shared tremendous things. And I think in part because they had the invitation, and the other part because they weren't going to be interrupted. At least they trusted that I was going to be silent, and I was. And so there were really profound moments where, when listening, in my mind, I started to think about, are they done or not? It was awkward to not have a follow-up question or to go a little deeper and say, well, could you tell me more or whatever? And yet, when you gave people that time, they opened up even more. And of course, it depended on some other variables. So I had a tremendous time at Burning Man for this week. And some of it was very uncomfortable. Some of it was just extraordinary and soul nourishing. I mean, I had one interaction with these 3 people. I was kind of guiding them through the camp, showing them different things. We had a geodesic dome, all these things. And after 30 minutes of walking them around, this guy patted me on the back. He says, oh man, I really like you. This was great. What a great conversation. And I never showed him my card.
Hilarious.
I never told him I was silent. And yet he was certain we had a conversation. And in a way we did, right? We had an interaction. But I think for some people, they never noticed that I was silent. And I know that there are quiet parts of the world, or quiet corners of the world, that sometimes go unnoticed. So that got me thinking. I had these cards to prompt for a question each day, and some of them were good, some more. So I had 7 cards for the 7 days. And then I started to look at the ones that worked really well. And I talked to my business partner, Terry, and I said, Terry, we were friends at that time, not yet in this business. And I said, hey, what do you think about these questions? And what if we came up with other questions? He's like, okay, yeah, sure, right? I mean, it was a cool experience, but he didn't know what it was going to come yet. And so I thought, all right, nobody probably is going to go to Burning Man and choose to be silent for a week because I told him it was a great experience. Probably not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. And so what could I do then to encourage people to do this a little differently, to do human interaction, human connection a little differently? What were the elements then? And so as I started to think about the elements, I realized, well, there's got to be vulnerability. There should be trust, right? What about gratitude? Well, gratitude should be there. How about love? And so it was this umbrella, curiosity, all the different things. And it was like kind of whirling this in a mind blender. Like, what does it look like on the other side? And what about a game? would people play a game like that if they could have tremendous output like that?
Thank you to you. Thank you to our audience for coming right off track with us for another adventure. And we look forward to having you next time. Thank you again, Sam.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.